Hi, everyone. This is Sarah and Mike's Best Picture podcast. In this podcast, we'll be discussing the winners of the Best Picture Academy Award in order. This is our first episode, so we'll be talking about the first Best Picture winner, which was 1927's Wings. The Academy Award that Wings won was titled Outstanding Picture and was only called that for 1 year before they started using the term Best Picture. At the 1929 Academy Awards, there was also a category of Best Unique and Artistic Picture, which was won by the movie Sunrise, A Song of Two Humans, which we will cover next week, and despite the fact that most people consider Wings to be the first true Best Picture. Won one other Academy Award in addition to Best Picture, which was Best Engineering Effects, and we will get into that during the discussion. Wife, Sarah Cole.
Hi, I'm Sarah.
Sarah's going to be my co-host as we go through the I think it's 89 Best Pictures so far. By the time we get caught up, there will be at least one or two more new ones. So we just watched Wings about an hour ago. What did you think of the movie?
I thought it was good. It told a story better than I had expected from a silent movie. I haven't seen many silent movies.
Yeah. This is because it's the first one, it's a silent movie. There isn't really another silent movie until 2011's The Artist that won Best Picture, although next week's Sunrise might, because technically it's not considered Best Picture. I was surprised by a lot of it, because I saw it like a long time ago and I didn't remember anything about it. And I was surprised by the fact that I was surprised by a lot of the reason it won the engineering effects is because all the airplane stuff, which I thought was really cool. They were because it's World War I and there's a lot of fighter planes and they used real planes. It wasn't this was one of the first times when they were able to really get on planes and do dog fights with cameras and actually show real dog fights, and it was really cool. Considering that, I was surprised also. I forgot that the movie's black and white, but I forgot that there was color in the flames and the gunfire. They made those orange to show them, to make it pop off, off the screen. When you're watching the movie, it's it's like sepia black and white, and then you've got this bright orange every time there's a gunfire or every time there is a plane is on fire and about to crash and burn. It's it's bright orange, and it really jumps off the screen. But basically, the idea of the movie is it's two guys who are in love with the same woman. She's in love with a guy named David, and Jack is in love with her, even though she doesn't love Jack back. But they go into, and Mary loves Jack, even though Jack loves Sylvia, Sylvia's barely in the movie. She's not really a big character. But the two guys go off to training and become friends. It doesn't really seem as if they seems like they know each other before that, but not as if they're friends. But they become friends in training, and they become two of the hotshot ace pilots. And then in the process of doing that, they really form a really good friendship as they're going through all that. So there's this love triangle, and it's really. The love triangle kind of falls apart, and it becomes more about their friendship, and the romance kind of fades away, and it's not that important. And it's important as a plot device, but it's not important in any other way really. Whereas their friendship is, and then ultimately, Jack ends up meeting up with Mary a couple times. Mary's played by Clara Bow. Who I thought this was interesting. I read when I was doing the research about this movie that she's the quintessential flapper girl.
Oh.
And I thought that was interesting because most of the movie she's not dressed she's dressed in military outfits and stuff, and so they do throw in one scene in which she's supposed to be in like they're in Paris and she throws on like a sequined dress, and also there was like there was like a decent, it was close to nudity in like her, they showed like,
I was surprised at the dress.
Yeah,
it showed like it had a huge cutout to like her midsection. And
yeah, well there was like side boob and cleavage and stuff, but also like when she was undressing behind the thing and the guys came in, I think there was like a second where we saw like almost full boob. Like it was real quick, but I was like surprised. Now I've taken film classes, like film history classes, and I know that like prior to 1935 or so, there was a lot more risque stuff before they adapted or adopted the film code, which would like which they enforced like moral standards within the movies at that point. But that was in reaction, I guess, to a lot of people thinking movies were immoral because of all the stuff they were showing. But I hadn't seen much of it, so it was a little surprising. There was that. IMDb credits this as being the first kiss between two men, and it definitely makes it sound as if it's a gay kiss. And I don't think it was that. I thought it was a kiss. It was like friend. It was.
It was a little.
It's something that we would consider like awkward by today's standards, like for two like heterosexual friends to do. But I didn't think it was. I don't know. I mean, your family doesn't necessarily do that as much, but like my grandfather kisses everybody, like,
yeah.
And so I guess like it's just a cultural thing. Like we got the Italian like let's kiss everybody thing that I didn't get, but like I kind of wonder if that's what it was, because it was not a mouth on, it wasn't a mouth on mouth kiss. It was like mouth on corner mouth kiss, like, and it was while he was his best friend, and what spoiler alert, best friend is dying, and he gave him a kiss while he's holding him and trying to like make him feel better as he's dying, and yeah, it was a little bit awkward, but I didn't think it was. I don't know. I wouldn't give it credit as like the first gay kiss. I would give, it was odd, if anything. I also found it really. At first, when the movie first started, I thought that there was going to be. I thought they were going to be really glossy over, like how like a lot of movies during World War. I haven't seen many World War One movies that were made prior to World War Two, I guess. And so, like when you watch World War Two movies that were made during the war, they're all like, "Gee, go show Mr. Hitler what's what," and like it's all like pro America, and it's really like it glosses over and makes it seem like, and obviously like we had to be in that war, but like it at first I really thought it was going to be like, oh, we got to go fight in planes and we had like fun in planes, and then you kind of did see the horrors of war a little bit more than I expected, don't you think?
Yeah, I don't think it glorified it.
No,
and
but I also
at the end of the war.
Yeah, I mean like World War One is known as being an especially like brutal war. Like for people, like there was a lot of PTSD. People were. Because I mean, this wasn't the typical viewpoint of it, because most of World War One, as we think of it, is trench warfare, and it's people that were like, buried in these little trenches, just packed in there with other people, and so it's like a very different feel. And so the plane idea is probably is the like more glorious like concept of it, but they did still get the like horrors of war, and they mentioned in a couple of the title screens things about it being like especially what did they say, like it was especially horrific and things, and you see like you see a kid die, and when I say a kid, like I mean like a 16 or 17-year-old soldier, like he looked like he was too young to enlist, but like back then it wasn't out of the ordinary for an underage kid to lie and enlist. and they show him like die and like slump over on the ground, and then they just kind of sat on the frame of his corpse for like a couple seconds longer than I would expect, and he looked like he didn't look prettied. He looked
Is that the one that was smoking?
Yeah, the one that was smoking on this tree stump.
And they put out his cigarette after he died.
Yeah.
I thought that was like really cinematic and.
Yeah, there was a lot of cool like stuff that you think of it.
It wasn't
being
just like all explosions and blowing stuff up or all flying. There was a lot more story to it.
There was a lot of the story was really good and well developed in a way that I didn't expect. But also there was a lot of visual metaphors, and I guess when I was like, I wasn't expecting it. I was, because I kind of think of it as still being so new in the art form that people are just trying to figure out the literal ways of presenting things. But like, there's when one of the main characters dies. As he's dying, there's a propeller slowing down, and he was a pilot, so the propeller slowing down is like his life ending, and when it stops, it cuts back to his dead body.
There's also one good example of foreshadowing was when they're going off to the last battle. They both had lucky charms that they had throughout the film, and when they go off to the last battle, neither of them have their lucky charms.
Right. And even though the other one survives, he ends up because so Jack leaves his teddy bear, his little tiny teddy bear. That's his lucky charm. He leaves it at the tent, and he goes off with David leaves the teddy bear, and he goes off with Jack, who leaves his locket with the girl that isn't in love with him's picture in it. And they leave those things and go off to fly. And then David ends up crashing, but being able to get away. And he's on the enemy's side, so he steals one of their planes and tries to get Jack's attention when they're in the air, and Jack shoots him down. And Jack is like he was shooting him down because he thought that he was shooting down one more. They didn't call him what did they call him? It's a different term. Heine. They called him Heine.
Yeah.
Heine, which sounds like it might be a slur. But he said he was trying to shoot down one more Heine for, in memory of David, who he thought was dead, but he accidentally shot down David. And in the process of doing that, he feels victorious, lands, runs over to steal the Iron Cross emblem off the back of his plane, which is in the side of this house, and the woman who's at the house says, "Please, he's about to die. Just come in and see him." And he comes in and sees that it's David after he thought he'd killed. He thought that he was killing a German, but he ended up killing his best friend, and so that's when they sit there together. Even though Jack survives, he because he didn't have his lucky thing there, he was also out of luck. He killed his best friend. They did a really good job about having him go to David's parents and the guilt, and that's another thing that I wasn't expecting was the amount of I've seen a decent amount of silent films, but most of the silent films I've seen have been comedies. They've been Charlie Chaplin movies, and so it's a little different because there is emoting that way, but it's not the same necessarily. And in this, the actor that plays Jack, whose name was Charles Buddy Rogers, he does an amazing job of just showing how guilty he feels based on his face. It's horrific, and then you see the parents getting the news that their son is dead, and the two of them. The three performances are incredible, and in a way that I didn't expect, without words. Is there anything else that really stood out to you about the movie?
I liked the love story between Jack and Mary.
Yeah.
Um,
So Mary basically is. I get at the beginning of the movie. It said Jack says that I saved Mary's life, and sometimes I wish I hadn't. Like he saved her from a creek or something when they were kids. And you get the feeling that Mary is kind of like annoying to him, but she's clearly in love with him. She like at one point says, "You know what you do when you see a shooting star? You get to kiss the girl you love," and she's hoping that he'll kiss her, and he rushes off in the car to try to go kiss that Sylvia girl, um, and she looks disappointed by that. Um, and I think that and then she ends up enlisting. That's how he ends up seeing her in France, even though he's too drunk to realize it's her when he sees her in France. Um, and while I said this was a dramatic movie, there's a lot of comedy, especially in the drunk scene. I thought um,
yeah,
it's a little goofy because he's drunk off champagne and he's obsessed with bubbles, and and Mary and this other girl are fighting over him, and he's like, whoever has the best bubbles, which I kind of think might have been a little tongue in cheek. It's hard to tell, but he did directly say to the girls, like, whoever has the best bubbles, I'll go with. Like,
yeah,
um, so I kind of think that was somewhat sexual. And obviously, like, there's enough other things in there that I feel like that makes it kind of obvious that they were going for the sexual thing. He at the end of the movie he also feels he's confessing to Mary that there was a girl in Paris, and apparently he thinks he had sex with her, and that's what I got took out of it was that he thought he had sex with her, and it is Mary, and they didn't have sex. She was she was trying to get him back to the front lines so he didn't get court-martialed, but he was too drunk to fully take her seriously, and he didn't realize who she was. One thing that I thought was interesting too. I mean, like I said, there's a lot. There's a lot of things like we don't see a lot of movies from World War One in general. I don't think, but we also haven't seen. There's only two that I'm aware of that. There's only two that won Best Picture that I'm aware of, but there's only two that I'm aware of in general that were made kind of that are big and still kind of remembered that were made before World War II, and that and that's this and All Quiet on the Western Front, and believe All Quiet on the Western Front. We'll get to that in a couple weeks because that's only a couple years after this, but I believe that one's from the point of view of the Germans, but this one's all American. And I thought it was interesting that there's a character named sorry, I wrote it down. Herman Swift, played by L. Brendel, and Herman Swift is the comic relief. He's the slapstick, and he's dumb, and the whole point of him, if he goes to every scene and they're like, we're not going to have a. I think they make the statement that he's Dutch, so he's not technically German, but he's Dutch, and so they don't want him on their on. They don't want him as like a double agent or someone who's allegiant to the fatherland or whatever it is. So they like kind of keep saying that to him, and then he proves himself to be truly American with this tattoo that he has of the American flag, and it's clear that the tattoo, it looks like it was a rubber stamp, because there's that like little black edge. It's like on his bicep. It's on like the weird spot. Like you wouldn't get a tattoo there either. Like they clearly didn't know that much about tattoos. I mean, maybe tattoos back in the day were different, but
yeah,
he has it on his bicep, and there is like a little bit of like a black line, like you would see on a rubber stamp, around the edge that like doesn't match the tattoo, and you obviously wouldn't get that if it was an ink, with a needle tattoo. But there's that. But he tends to be he fails out of flight school, so he becomes an engineer because he can't. He's too dumb, and they really they beat the crap out of him like during training to show how like inferior he is, um, and it's interesting because like I mean I'm sure we do it a little bit with with Nazis, but like when it comes to World War II, when we talk about Germans, it's so you know, it's so much more insidious and less like incompetent. And so to see that like that's how we viewed Germans or people from that area, because he's technically Dutch. At that point, is like an interesting thing that I wouldn't have known about. Um, it's also interesting because it is at this point 10 years after the war when they made the movie, and so like it's not the same kind of propaganda that you would have if it was 19, 18 or 19, and this movie was coming out to like bolster the end of the war or whatever. This is 10 years after. Well, it was 10 years after the events of the movie, but it was um, 8 or 9 years after the war had ended, and it's. I think that's interesting. Like I don't know, we probably wouldn't show if a movie if we were making a movie about any other war. I don't think we would right now any other war that we're out of. We wouldn't show the bad guys as being goofy dumbasses. We would show them as potentially as insidious or as in like or you know the, against our way of life, but not. I don't know, I feel like I guess propaganda has just changed for us. Like you think
Yeah.
about the movies of the '80s that were like Russians were the bad guys, and then there was terrorists were the bad guys, and they're like, but you don't look at them and think you don't see those characters in movies and think real like stupid. You see those characters in movies at the time, and like when we were in those issues, and you kind of see them as being like they're bad guys, and they're competently bad. Don't you think that was
Yeah, I agree with
interesting?
that.
Like this
Yeah,
guy was
for
like the
sure.
Charlie Chaplin or the like he was the comic relief, and maybe it wasn't intended that way, but it just seemed too obvious to not be. But
Yeah. One other thing I really liked or thought was impressive was when at the end when Jack blows up the blimp.
yeah,
I thought that like looked really good, and
yeah,
you know
yeah. The
it was like cool to watch.
Yeah, the aerial shots, the dog fighting and the aerial shots were incredible. I mean, there was stuff in there that was really amazing. It must be tough without models and without like they didn't have green screen back in the day, but they would do projections where you'd be in front of a screen that something was being projected up onto, and there is like one or two shots on the ground where that seems to be the case, but pretty much everything in the air seems like it was legitimately filmed in the air, and there's a lot that absolutely was, which is why it won that engineering effects Oscar. Um, but it's I don't know. I thought that like that's kind of it's got the comedy aspect, some of the slapstick stuff at the beginning. It has the drama with the friendship and the romance, and then it has action. And you don't really think of action as being a thing that came along until car chases, till Bullet or whatever. Like, yeah, there was action in movies before that, but like you think of you know stuff like Bonnie and Clyde and Bullet and those kind of movies as being the first like movies with action the same way. And this had, I mean, this is I feel like like if you like action sequences, this pretty I think it holds up pretty well. Um, I mean, obviously you could do better now, but like
There's a fair amount
yeah,
of flying, and like to do that
yeah,
must have been really,
yeah.
time consuming.
Well, also they were using film, and a lot of times those reels are like they're like 10 minute. You have like 10 minutes of film time, which means that you have to like they probably don't have a cameraman on the front of the plane, so you're probably getting the camera set up and focused and everything else, getting it recording, taking off, doing the sequence before the film runs out. Like that's gonna be intense.
Yeah.
It also, I don't, I mean, I'm not sure, but I would imagine that in order to do that, you probably have to get some of because you have the two main characters in cockpits in the air in front of the camera and like close-ups. Not the other ones you just hire pilots to fly around and do stunts, but with those, I would imagine those two actors had to do at least some flying, unless it was one of those dual cockpit things. But
there's also a couple plane crashes where it's possible they were miniatures or something, but they looked legit.
Yeah.
They,
Yeah.
It's not as impressive today because so much is computer.
Yeah. Well, even with miniatures, you could do like you could have like think about drones and all the you can go buy any kind of plane as a remote controlled plane. You could go crash those together and have the special effects of the explosion or whatever. But knowing that they definitely didn't have that technology, I think it looks amazing.
Yeah.
And it's funny. We should mention that we were probably the first 20 minutes of this movie. I looked over and I was not really into it. And I don't think, based on when I looked over at you, I don't think you were into it. I think it took us a while.
Yeah, it took a while.
And then once we were into it, I think we were both like really into it.
Yeah.
Because the beginning had to kind of just set everything up, and and it wasn't.
Well, you have to read in between the frames to kind of even really get the story.
Yeah.
So you definitely do.
Yeah.
Have to pay attention to really.
I'm not saying skip the first 20 minutes. I'm just saying like bear through the first 20 minutes, because I do think that you get through those and then you get this great film. And the first 20 minutes isn't bad. It's just I think we were both kind of like, oh, I hope this isn't the pacing of the whole movie. Yeah. I don't think we knew it was going to get so much better. I think if we knew that now, we could probably go sit through the first 20 minutes easier. So, just grin and bear the first 20 minutes.
There's also, this is minor, but there are two versions with different music, and I wonder how that would change some of the feel of the film.
We got the DVD from Netflix, and on the DVD there is the original, it's like pipe organ music, and that's what we chose because we assumed that was more like the original experience. But there was also like a remastered version, which I think had sound effects, it said too, by Ben Burt, who was he's famous for doing a lot of the Star Wars special sound effects. He might be one of the best sound designers ever, and he like remastered and redid the sound on this film. We didn't watch that version. That version you might find more interesting. We just kind of wanted to get the more like real experience of it. All right, so this was the first podcast for the Mike and Sarah's Best Picture podcast. Next episode is going to be Sunrise, a Song of Two Humans. We should hopefully have that for you in about a week or so. Also, I want to mention that that even though I am going by Michael Cole on here, I go by Michael Christopher Cole when I'm writing. I added the Christopher after realizing that there is a Michael Cole who writes academic books, I believe science books, and if you like go on my book on Amazon and click Michael Cole, it takes you to his books, and so that's why I added the Christopher, which is my middle name. This is a Chocolate Diamond Media production, and this is the first Chocolate Diamond Media production since changing the name, and we're excited to do this podcast. If you want to email us, and if you want to watch the movies along with us, the next one will be Sunrise, and then we're going to do the regular Best Picture winners. If you want to watch any with us and email us your thoughts or comments, or if you have any interesting trivia that might be good for the podcast, let us know. My email address is mikediamond82984@gmail. And also, it would be great if you could subscribe to this podcast and rate us on iTunes, give us a review. That would be great because all word of mouth will help, but also the reviews get us more subscribers, and obviously that would be a great thing for us. We will see you next week.